Are we live? I think we are live. Hello, everyone. Super excited to be here today with a friend, somebody I immensely admire, and who has achieved an extraordinary amount of things in her career. But first, I wanted to quickly introduce myself and Female Founder Collective. I'm Wyatt. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Female Founder Collective. Female Founder Collective has two parts. We have a grant-making body called Female Founder Collective, where you can also get a seal, where you can put the seal on your business to denote that you're female founded so that people can vote with their wallets and support you and hopefully make you richer. And then we have another part that we launched recently called the 10th House. And the 10th House is our private membership community where you can come to find other founders by stage, by industry, by geography, by whether or not they're venture backed, and hopes that you can find the resources you need really quickly. As well, we have a number of different partners that work with us along the way. Some of them include UPS, which we just had a workshop with. We have Squarespace as a partner of ours. We have JustWorks, and they're all offering exclusive discounts inside the community that more than add up to give you ROI on your membership. So definitely check that out. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Lindsey Taylor Wood, who is an extraordinary entrepreneur and a supporter of women in many forms. But she has built and run two companies and the Helms First Fund. She is a proven operator and investor. She has invested in some of the country's best women-led companies. Prior to the Helm, Lindsay founded and was president of an impact agency with clients like AOL Makers, Women Moving Millions, the Harnish Foundation, and filmmaker Rashida Jones, Jill Bauer, and Rana Grietas. Before consulting, she was on the founding team of Catapult, a crowdfunding platform for girls and women. And having spent 15 plus years in the gender equality movement, her ability to found, build, and introduce new funding products with a gender lens has made her a sought-after strategist in the women's rights movement, which is very true. And I'm actually really proud to say that I've invested in a company at Lindsay's suggestion. And that was one of the Helms specific portfolio companies. And that has been doing really well, which is Tia Clinic. So thanks to Lindsay, I was able to join in that. So she's incredible. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi.
So good to have you.
Weird, aren't they?
What?
Bios are so weird, aren't they?
They're like, it's a little uncomfortable being the person to sit there and listen. And you're like, oh, wow, like, have I done all that?
Yeah.
But you most certainly have. And I wanted to start off with a question, and that's that you've really dedicated your life to women. I was wondering, how did this become your purpose? Like, how did it ultimately sort of spring in your head? I really want to support women in whatever way I can. And why do you think this is so important?
Goodness, I haven't been asked that question in a long time. It began because I think I've always had, even as a little kid, sort of a fight in me for people who faced some sort of oppression or injustice. And I don't think you know exactly what that means or looks like when you're little, other than you're having these strong reactions to things that you think are wrong. And as you grow older, you start to sort of see the applicability of what that looks like in the real world. And for me, I became really interested in some of the things that were happening in Africa and Central Africa, and began advocating for specifically things that were happening with conflict minerals, and went to work in the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when I was there, it became very clear that as we all know now, the sort of state of women is a great indicator of the health of a country in all ways, whether it's peace and reconciliation, whether it's, economic opportunity, And the women in the Democratic Republic of Congo face some of the greatest challenges there are. And so I think that for me was a sort of entry into why having equal opportunity for women mattered. And it sort of grew from there. I then, began a career working with an NGO in New York City after being there. And a longer story, but basically then this dovetailed into the Helm because I realized that we were talking a lot about the social and political only recently, in the last, I would say 10 years, political ramifications of not having equality when it comes to feminism, social sort of equity we've been talking about for a long, long time, but economic equality is almost always left off the stage. We talk about that three-legged stool of what feminism really is. And so that also was of particular interest as it related to strategies around empowering women. And I'm happy to stop there. That's
No, so I was going to say, well, talk to us. I think that's a good segue into why the Helm. Like, there's so many very dynamic and very complex issues that women face. And I think particularly as it relates to economic inequality, this is something that you've zeroed in on and you're able to address. And you're able to do it in a way, I don't want to say that it's capitalistic, but that that really sort of lives inside of the structure of society that we're built in. And so, and sort of helps women to participate in a much more impactful way. So talk about the Helm and why you structured it the way that you did, and what sort of brought you to where you are today.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I'd been working for an NGO, and then I started a consulting company, and I'd worked in all of these various industries and sectors, the through line always being women's rights and empowerment. And then when I started the consulting company, and I was doing gender lens philanthropic strategies, so working with family offices, high net worths, and talent on the sort of ways in which they wanted to develop strategies and then execute against them to empower women. But specifically, again, the underpinning was philanthropy. And after I did that for about 6 years, I was looking around and I was realizing that whether it was access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, women in the C-suite, who was in front of and behind the camera, all of these initiatives that I, with my clients, had, taken on, we weren't seeing the sorts of social returns we were looking for. And often we were seeing things were either moving in the wrong direction or had plateaued entirely. And so I just became really disenchanted with philanthropy as this sort of catch-all for quote unquote investing in women. And at that point, I really wanted to understand what other tools there were for doing that, so that rather than using our capital sort of retroactively, we were proactively thinking about how to structure the world we want and focusing on systemic change in a way that I just wasn't seeing or responding to, and that frankly wasn't resulting in the sort of impact that I was looking to create. And so I spent a year really, speaking to clients and allies and stakeholders in the space and figuring out why philanthropy was the way they were approaching things, what they had seen, what was possible. And through these conversations around capital, was made aware of the situation in venture capital. Specifically, 2.3% of all venture capital goes to women, female founders, or said differently, 98% of venture capital goes to men who have historically been white cis men. And the implications of that, which I feel like aren't talked about as much as the statistics, which is really thinking about what that means. Which is a world that is, built by men, made for men. Men are the recipients of the profit from those things they've created.
Yeah.
Like connecting the dots. Yeah.
They're making the men investors rich, and they're making the founders who are leaving those companies rich. So.
Absolutely. And then also connecting the dots to what that means for the things we're seeing culturally, right? So we're seeing things that don't consider the environment. We're seeing policies, products, cultures that are resulting in environmental degradation and a lack of paid leave and fair pay and clean supply chains. And so that to me was an aha moment of, why is it that philanthropy is the only way we invest in women? Why are we not deploying these other tools? And so that was very catalytic for me. And then the other thing that was incredibly catalytic for me was that when I went out to raise, so the end result was I wanted to create a company that made it easy to invest in women. And so the sort of second aha moment, which has only fueled my passion for getting women on both sides of the table, both as founders and funders, was that when I began these conversations, it was 2016. Everyone thought I was crazy. This was not the cultural conversation that we're having now, where, we've seen in the last couple of years this robust discussion happening around female founders and now more so female funders. But I was really early to this. And so I assumed that when I went out to raise a small proof of concept fund in 2017, that all of these women who I had long-standing relationships with and worked with for many years, and who along, with them had deployed massive amounts of philanthropic capital, that they would be the first to sort of the line to see like, wow, this is a great opportunity. I'm willing to bet on this. I'm willing to bet on you. And that wasn't the case. And so that sort of brings me to the second point, which is not only that we have this underutilized tool, which is venture capital and angel investing, but also that historically women have been totally fine giving their money away and participating in charitable giving, but completely reticent and unwilling or unable or lacking the tools and support they need to make for-profit investments with their money and to think about their relationship with their money differently. And so we set out to build a company and a fund that did just that. It brought founders and funders, specifically women, together in order to create systemic change and equal access to capital in the venture capital space.
And Lindsay, when you think about how women invest differently, now that you do have angel investors that are part of the fund, the various LPs that you work with, how do they think about investing differently from men and differently from philanthropic investing? Like, have you seen patterns emerge? And can you sort of share some advice for the people that are looking to raise funds, particularly from women? Because we hear a lot from our founders within FFC that it's a real struggle to actually get women to back them more so than men.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always cautious to answer questions in broad strokes about women because, as we know, we are not a monolith, and certainly
Right.
there are people who will fall into and out of the sort of trends that I've seen. And I know there's also a lot of data that says women are not more risk averse when it comes to finance, but I would still stand by. I can't say if those studies are more focused on public equities or whether those women are working with financial advisors, or I don't know what the sort of container for which those studies were done is. But I still think that what I've observed for many, many, many years now of doing this work is that women are extremely cautious and risk averse when it comes to making direct investments. And as a result of that, the time horizon for getting them to say yes is significantly longer than that of men. The size of the checks is significantly smaller than that of male counterparts. The diligence process is much more arduous. I can't tell you how many times I've met with someone's father, mother, truly wealth manager, children, friend, like associate that also wanted to sort of weigh in. However, I will say this. When I first started, as I mentioned, I had a real reaction to that because I knew so many forward-thinking women who were writing huge checks philanthropically, who had the capacity and the vision and the sort of gumption to do this very thing. But I do think it is important to sort of honor that we have been shut out of these rooms and these conversations and this education and even the sort of by osmosis, I feel like, experience that men have been afforded by virtue of being men in this world. We don't have those things. And so part of the reason that we actually ended up creating an angel syndicate is because it made sense that women who had never written a check before weren't going to write a $250,000 LP check to be a partner in a venture fund. And I think once I sort of got over the blunt force trauma of realizing how behind the times women were in participating in finance, and was able to really do deep listening and to show up with more empathy and compassion for why it was that women had that aversion historically to it, I could think more creatively about, okay, then how can we provide those resources, that community, these opportunities, this education that would make this a more pleasant and sort of compassionate experience for you as you navigate your way through it. And so that's, why we ended up creating this second product. And also because we really feel strongly in democratizing access, and so ensuring that people who, even if they did have the threshold or risk appetite for doing it, but maybe choose not, could still participate in a meaningful way. I think you're on mute.
Sure was. Thank you. How do you guys think about or I should say ladies, investments? How do you identify the companies that you want to invest in? And then what does that diligence process look like with your angels and your LPs?
So we have one process that we use on behalf of the fund and our angel community. So typically we would try not to extend beyond 5 weeks as a time horizon for diligence. So normally 1 or 2 of my partners will take an initial call with a founder. They will videotape that call so that the rest of the team, should it be greenlit, go back and watch it so we don't waste the founder's time having them share the exact same information more than once. Right. And we try and do that throughout the process. So they have an initial meeting. They've seen the deck. They've spoken to the founder. There's sort of a, basic fundamental criteria that needs to be met. It's the right team. It's the right market. It's a big enough market. We focus on seed. So is there some sort of traction or product market fit that we can look to that makes us feel like it's a conversation worth continuing? That's usually the first call. Then again, those other 2 partners will view the video if all goes well. If we have buy-in, all 4 of us, at our next investment committee meeting, we'll start a formal diligence process. That includes a pretty exhaustive intake from founders, a form that they fill out and provide all sorts of information, be it financial or, again, traction, actuals, more about the team, references that we could reach out to if we need to, as well as putting together a data room if they don't already have one and sending that over. It usually then takes us probably a week or 2 to move through all of those materials, meet once or twice as a team. If there's consensus, we'll usually have a final call. So we'll have a 3rd call with the founder. And then we will do reference checks after that. And if it's a good fit, then we will write a minimum of a $250,000 check from the fund. Or if it is a CPG company or a consumer sort of centric company, those deals go to our angel group. And we share the investment memo with them so that they can understand, again, coming back to preparing materials for people and presenting them with education where they can understand the opportunity and learn about how to be a good investor. So we do share our investment memos with our angel community. And then that process is different. So if we think it's a good fit for the community, we'll ask the founder if they're comfortable participating in an SPV instead of a direct investment from the fund. If they are, we send that memo to our angel group. They have a chance to look at it. We'll then do a call with the founder, 45-minute Q&A followed by, or a 45-minute interview followed by a 15-minute Q&A with the angels with the founder. We then say goodbye to the founder, and then our angels have another 15 minutes to ask us questions that maybe they didn't feel were appropriate to ask in front of the founder. And then, people are able to participate. It was $1,500 minimum. We're now raising it to $2,500 minimum. That's also been really great. I think we've done 6 or 7 deals, and we've moved about $750,000 from a community that we, haven't sort of grew organically. We haven't put any marketing behind or built out.
Yeah, I was going to ask, if somebody wants to become an angel investor and be part of this opportunity where you're sitting there and you're bringing them all sorts of incredible deals, how do they do that?
They go to the helm.co and they go to invest. And underneath that, either in a hover state or when you click through, there is a link to join our membership community. It's $700, I think, dollars for the year. And that comes with a 6-part masterclass that you can do on your own time, which really delves into what it means to be an angel investor and what the venture landscape looks like. And then we have, as I mentioned, monthly calls with founders where you can engage with the people in whom you'd be investing. And then now that the world has resumed, somewhat from COVID, we'll start doing in-person events again as well. And then we also do some upstreams where we connect our members with one another so that they can start building community amongst themselves. And I will say, just to underpin this, because we sort of went through it quickly, but one of the things that's central to our core thesis for our venture fund is that of the 2.3% of venture capital that goes to women, what I observed very early on was that there was a disproportionate amount of that capital that goes to CPG companies. And while those companies are amazing and we want women to be able to have access to capital and create whatever they want to create, what that often means is that women are sort of relegated to only CPG companies, and they're not able to access capital in industries and sectors outside of that. So one of the reasons that it's sort of a win-win for us is that we're able to focus on 4 key trends outside of that, which for us are climate and sustainability, tech, fintech, specifically as it relates to democratizing access in Web 3.0, women's healthcare, and then aging broadly, with a sort of emphasis on death tech. And then why that's great for the angel community is because when those deals come in, we're still able to give them a good home and to share them with people for whom that might be of interest. And for angels, it's sort of back to like invest in what you know. So there's much more of a comfort level, I think, for those deals. That being said, we have provided angels with some opportunities to co-invest in companies we've done through the fund, or to participate in some of the growth opportunities from Fund 1 companies that are doing really well. So there's upside for both the fund and angels to sort of benefit from one another's deals.
And backing up and sort of looking at, I know you gave us a really robust look at your diligence process. Can you talk a little bit more about what seed means to you? Because that definition has been sort of a moving one in today's market. And sometimes seed investments are 3 to 7 million even. So what does seed mean to you as far as traction? What can you give us some examples of like certain benchmarks that you're looking for? Because that's a big question that we get asked all the time. And it seems like it's case by case with investors, but would love to hear your thoughts.
I think you just said it, which is there is no easy answer. It's case by case with us. I mean, I can tell you in broad strokes that I think that pre-seed usually means pre-revenue or there's not a product in market. It's sort of you're coming to the table with a vision and an idea and maybe like bare bones sort of MVP version of something that you want to build. And you're really looking for people to believe in your vision and in yourself and in your team. But there's not a lot to look at, right? There's no actuals, there's no traction that you're really engaging with. It's conceptual. I think with A, you're really looking at something that's ready to scale, right? And so seed has become anything in between. And to your point, I think it's a moving target. I also think it's like very hard to say because it feels like it's industry by industry now, even relative. So for us, it's really about, is there a product in market? Is there an MVP that has some traction where we can say definitively, even if it's you've got 100 members or subscribers or clients or whatever, I'm just sort of spitballing here, someone we can talk to, like a product that we can engage and see what the functionality looks like, a beta that we can participate in, something that's tangible, something that's in market, something that can give us a sense of where you're headed. That for us is really the baseline, but I think that your point is not only well made, but something every VC that I know right now is grappling with, because obviously it affects valuations and it affects how you think about the amount of equity that you can, secure in any company, as well as how can we best support you? And can we at all if you're at a stage that is beyond where we can normally be of service? So I do think it's relative. I wish I had a better answer. I don't think the industry has a great answer right now. I think that it's, being fundamentally disrupted. And I'm curious to see sort of where things go in the next year or two.
Yeah, I'm very curious as well, because it's a rapidly changing landscape and we're trying to give as many answers as possible to founders, but it's challenging, right? Because the industry is also changing so much. I want to talk a little bit more about your plans for the Helm in the future. And then I want to get into a question around just your general advice, which I know you've learned a lot, I'm sure, in the past year. We've all, as founders, had really hard past year and a half. So first, I want to hear more about the Helm and maybe how COVID has impacted the direction that you're taking in the future.
Well, it's an incredibly timely question because we have some announcements coming up, but I would say sort of more generally for now, when we started, as I mentioned, in 2016, having these conversations with folks, there was very little in the zeitgeist about investing in female founders. And so originally my vision was, and in some ways still is, having this much larger platform where there were a variety of entry points for people to come in and support and fund women. So whether that was being an LP, participating in an angel community, buying products and services from female founders. So we had, originally done our proof of concept fund in 2018. And then we built out this e-commerce platform and content platform, which allowed people to do exactly that. Shop hundreds and hundreds of female founded brands and products, read about female founders and funders, get practical advice, be inspired by their stories. And that was all going actually swimmingly right up until COVID hit. And what we didn't really touch on is that the way that our company is structured, I'm both a founder and a funder. So we raised a venture capital fund, which we were deploying, but I also went out and raised capital for the holding company, which included this content and e-commerce site. And we were doing a significant amount of sales, more than what we even projected. Things were going really well. I went out to raise our Series seed the week that COVID hit. And we had, I'm sure, so many founders listening can relate to this, but, and I'm not exaggerating when I say literally every single meeting we had on the books for several months canceled, our anchor check pull out, our lead check pull out, for that round. And it was a really devastating time. We ended up, having to lay off, I think 8 out of 11 people on our team, and to really go inward and figure out where we could create the most value. And whether it was worth rebuilding and what did that mean? And, how were we adding sort of to the body of work in the ecosystem? And ultimately, the sort of great news about the ecosystem really embodying, or the zeitgeist embodying, female founders and funders now, of which the Female Founder Collective and the 10th House is such a testament, is that all these years later, there are so many other places for people to seek those things out. Again, the Female Founder Collective being a great example of being able to identify these companies and to see the seal and to know that they're, consciously consuming and shopping their values. And so where we really ended up was, where are we making the most impact? And we were making the most impact by moving capital to women who needed it. And so that's what we're really focused on. We're currently raising our second fund, which is a $25 million vehicle. We've closed over 20% of it. We have an anchor. We've invested in 5 amazing companies. Really looking forward to wrapping that up and being able to support more women that way. We have this angel community, which we're continuing to grow to get more women to the table as investors. And really the financial products and on-ramps for directing capital towards female funders or female founders is where the majority of our muscle and resources will be going for the foreseeable future. You can still read our content. I think we have, honestly, one of the best editorial sites around female entrepreneurship and investing in the game. So I hope people will consider, seeking that out as a resource. But
True. That's very true, by the way. I can attest to that.
So yeah, that's where we're focused. That's where our energy is going. And that's where I think we're making the biggest difference.
And Lindsay, we only have a few seconds left, about a minute left. I would love to hear, as we sort of say goodbye. First of all, I need to ensure that everybody knows where to find you. And I know you mentioned earlier where you can become an angel, but let everyone know where to find you. But also just one of the most salient pieces of advice that you has sort of been ringing true as you have been navigating through the past year and a half and looking forward as a founder.
Goodness, that's a great question. I don't have like a specific memory of someone telling me this, but I would say the thing that I have come to hold most dear as a mantra and a guiding light as a founder is ruthless prioritization. And, it's so hard to move into that space when your vision is so big. And I think that this is a way in which women are penalized. Like, we know that women are based on traction and men are based on, women are judged on traction and men are judged on vision. And so when you go out and you try and swing for the fences and sell this big vision, ultimately it may not behoove you. Whereas saying, this is what we've done, this is where we're going, being really specific, and then being willing to make hard decisions to make that happen, is just the world we live in. So not to dissuade or discourage anyone from going out and swinging for the rafters, but I do think, having one thing you do really well, really clear KPIs, being willing to have a budget and a team that is lean, and to know where your impact lies and where your returns are, what your KPIs look like, and to sort of hold those in front of you and to let go of anything that doesn't serve them it has become more and more sort of prescient for me going through this journey.
Such good advice. It's like you're constantly having to sort of reset those as well. But thank you, Lindsay. And lastly, where to find you?
Thehelm.co.
Thehelm.co. And we're actually going to be doing an Ask Me Anything with Lindsay inside of our 10th house community in short order. So thanks everyone for joining us. Definitely reach out to Lindsay. She's doing incredible things, and love that you're moving capital for women. Much needed.
Thank you, Allie. More soon.
Bye, everyone.